Hello? Yeah. Oh, this is not the director?
David Tambayo, radio show host of Monologue, a program that looks at good governance, is one of many journalists in Sierra Leone who has been a victim of Part 5 of the 1965 Public Order Act, which criminalizes press freedom and free speech. In November 2014, on the orders of President Ernest Bai Koroma, Tambayo was arrested and detained at the Pademba Road Correctional Center for over a week on allegations of making inciting and inflammatory statements, thereby contravening the state of emergency that the country was under.
It feels bad for anybody to be in the position to suffer unnecessarily because of a law that should have long since been expunged from the law books. Don't forget that the 1965 Public Order Act, with special reference to Part 5 and some of the sections there like 26, 27, 31, 32, when you watch them clearly, you begin to think that even the common man outside there hasn't understood that part properly, in the sense that they think it is just for the media, the press, media practitioners that are shouting to make sure that that part is expunged. Mind you, it even affects the freedom of the individual to gather on the street and voice out what he or she believes or does not believe at all.
President of the Sierra Leone Association of Journalists, SLAJ, Kelvin Lewis, said journalists are worried that despite continuous advocacy and engagement with the authorities, politicians are still using the defamation and libel laws to victimize journalists and car them from performing their sacred responsibilities.
Our position remains the same. The law is there. We want it to be repealed. We are definitely not comfortable working under conditions with the law because it creates a fear factor and it inhibits our work seriously. It prevents people from going after real accountability stories because this is one law which, even if you say the truth, it is not a defense. The defense has to be that it is in public interest, that you're doing it, you're publishing in the public interest. And the question for us is, who decides what is in the public interest? It is just one man, the judge. And in most cases, we see the politicians have been using this law to harass journalists, to car them into submission when journalists want to look at things which are critical.
It is widely believed that a free press promotes democracy and good governance, and it is key in the fight against corruption. Sierra Leone has come a long way with media plurality, but criminalizing free speech causes a chilling effect on journalists, as most of them fear of being arrested for doing their work. Attorney General and Minister of Justice Joseph Fitzgerald Kamara believes politicians, this may include the president himself, have been using the obsolete law to victimize critical journalists, hence undermining good governance and democracy.
At the personal level, I do not hesitate that I have deep concerns about certain provisions of the Public Order Act that are repugnant to good governance, especially those that fetter press freedom. And you could see the world over. During my presentation to SLAJ, I made several comparative analyses as to how other countries have managed it. And I believe that those repugnant provisions of the seditious criminal libel and matters of defamation, we could manage better through the civil process. And how has it been managed before? Clearly, we have empiric evidence that it has been more victimization rather than real legal pursuit. And so if we have a good rethink of those provisions, we're looking at an area how we can have a comfort zone for the public, not to feel left out in terms of safeguarding their privacy. But at the same time, the ultimate position is we need to get those repugnant provisions.
Whilst in opposition and serving as minority leader in parliament, President Koroma promised journalists that he will repeal the criminal libel law. However, 8 years as president of Sierra Leone, the law is still being used by no less a person than himself and members of his government to jail critical journalists. Human rights lawyer and executive director of Society for Democratic Initiatives, Emmanuel Safa Abdullahi, believes as a democratically elected government, there is the need to open up by being tolerant to the media and allow citizens to have their say in the governance process. But President Nkrumah is said is not committed to repealing the law, even though it was one of his main promises as a Democrat.
And so it's a clear failure, and it's the fact that the political elites don't want to be criticized. I keep saying the African political elites, they don't have the thick skin to want to think, anybody can ask me questions, and get away with it. So it's a kind of a dicey situation. But I think the president ought to change that law. When he's leaving, he should leave that as a legacy, as part of his promise to the media.
United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon on World Press Freedom Day early this year urged governments, politicians, businesses and citizens to commit to nurturing and protecting an independent, free media, which is said without such a fundamental right, people are less free and less empowered. But in Sierra Leone, the struggle to attain a free society where journalists are not treated as criminals for their work still continues. I am Amadou Lamranaba reporting for Star Television News.